Google's busted.
Okay, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Just to qualify, we are live, have been live. Everything you said has been picked up already. He is not available this evening, he's doing the ZBA. So Bob White, who manages our recording, is in the ZBA meeting, but he had turned it on prior to our arrival. That's all of us. And so we are live. May I ask the clerk to do the roll call?
Present today, Chairman Pidgeon, Vice Chairman Hurd, Clerk Bailey. Who is here? Mr. Novick. Mr. Camarado, Mr. Lawrence, Mr. Well, just Jerry. How do you say it? I'll get it right next time.
Stefanski.
Stefanski?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Good, welcome back from your world travels.
Thank you.
Can anybody else join you on an expense account next time you go or something like that?
My daughter paid her own way entirely, which was quite surprising.
What countries did you go to?
I had to go to work in England, but so last year I had told her that if she saved up her own money, that she would go with me, fully expecting that would be the end of it. You know, working at Petco, she saved up enough money to pay for 2 weeks worth of adventures. So she chose Ireland, England, where we were already at, and then she wanted to go to Paris ever since she was a kid. So completely walked me off my feet. Came back middle of last week, and we had our first grandchild Monday morning.
Wonderful and
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
And so if I just been uttering nonsense tonight, you'll understand why.
That happens as
That's what I
grandparents.
do.
And welcome back from your surgery.
Good. At least he has an excuse. If I utter nonsense, I have no excuse.
Well, we're all together. What we're going to do is go over those issues that our last meeting we postponed. And to start with, you all have a copy of the free cash that's been estimated at $3 million. He hasn't received the exact figure, but it's plus or minus $10, something like that. It's his figure, and they verify that that's what it is. The snow and ice holdback, he just wants to keep that in reserve, and the free cash rollover, again, kept in reserve. So the total available for town meeting is $1,750,000, and he gives you a breakdown of what they would like to do with the money. The stabilization fund, the specialization, the SPED is what we have questions of, and that is an article, separate article for its creation, and that's $200,000. And when we get to that, I can go into some details that I've discussed with the school department on. The reserve for union contracts is also another $100,000 for union contracts that 2 years ago we set aside, and coupled with that, it should take care of everything. The school capital, we'll go into that in the town capital. So are there any questions before we begin? Being none?
Good.
Okay, and Article 3, we have set aside, which is the transfer of free cash. And that'll take place as he's outlined. As for the stabilization fund, which is $150,000, the OPD trust fund, which is $300,000, and the special education fund, assuming that the town meeting approves it, is $200,000, as was requested by Michael at our previous meeting. Are there any questions?
I'd just like to say that the stabilization fund has been a overwhelming success, that we've actually been able to plan ahead and utilize that money and put it in that fund. That's helped us with our ratings, our bond rating. It's helped us with our interest rates. That's been a very good move that we've taken in the last few years. And starting an OPEB is also another good step in the right direction to financial stability.
And to add to your comments, we've just been notified that our bond rating has been reaffirmed
Excellent.
as a result of our stabilization fund and making sure it's well-funded continuously.
When he says snow and ice holdback, is that just another rollover in the snow and ice?
You know, that was a little vague.
And when he says free cash rollover, we mean we're rolling it over, but it's included somewhere else in the new budget.
Yes. Because there is a separate line item within the budget, and the only way money can be put into it is by town meeting vote.
Sure.
Any further
other
questions, Ed?
priorities we should have?
Good.
No one else has brought up any priorities that we should consider, anyone should consider?
No, and with respect to the Special Education Stabilization Fund, in my conversation with Michael, I explained that in reality what we're doing is offloading their budget, $200,000, which is reasonable because they have to set that money aside within their budget. So in the course of the fiscal year, they aren't able to use it because it's needed for the safeguard in case someone does show up. But as we were in the conversation, there are there's a certain amount that are required if a person comes in. Let's say they come in for $150,000 with transportation and training outside the district. The state gives us a certain level that we're required to fund. We obviously only pay the portion that is balanced from what the previous district had been paying where the child had resided, plus the transportation. But in the subsequent fiscal year, the state reimburses based on a percentage of the difference the base difference, and that goes into it. And I said, well, since we are spending the money initially, they say the $200,000, he's taking the money out of that, and he's getting money back from the state. I said, why does the school committee vote to move that balance into the stabilization fund as a repayment? Although it's not the full amount, at least it's a good faith effort to move it over. He has to broach that with the school committee. He doesn't think it's going to have any problem because they'll have to take it out of the circuit breaker fund and to move it into the special ed stabilization fund. But he felt that was a good idea considering we're taking money out of our operational fund to fund the special ed initially. And they are getting money in addition to that, and how about
Giving some of it back.
yeah, whatever percentage is, in good faith. And he feels it's not going to be a problem.
That's fine. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't have to fill this back up next year if we fill it this year. So whether they keep it or send it back to this
Yeah.
same place.
We may have to refill it as, in every subsequent fiscal year to make sure it caps at 200,000, but it may not be 100%.
You want 400?
He indicated he would like 400, but I would rather see what he has had to pay in the past for the special ed coming in before I would consider that. If that's an impact to his budget, then something we have to discuss.
I think he said he'd never had a year where he had a $400,000 problem.
Mhm. Okay, and then transfer free cash, Article 3, we have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. I think, if memory serves, I had promised Jackie and Ken I would try to take them first, or earlier, anyway. Let me see. Solar pilots, I believe, Jackie. Would you like to take it there, or come up? That's Article 30.
Article 30, basically what you have in
front of you is a placeholder to see how many pilots I can bring in for town vote by the end of next month. We have one in place right now. It was our first one, and that was approved at the Springtown meeting. And now we have several others behind it that, after, as soon as I get the values set, that'll be my next one that we've already started talking to solar projects about. Right now we have about 9 solar projects in town. Not all of them are taxable, and not all of them are on pilots. But the newer ones that have come in since I have been here have wanted to work with us on a pilot. So I am doing my level best to get that done.
Tell us how they work.
Sure. The pilot basically, so it's very simply, the reason that the solar project developers want to get involved in a pilot is because it allows their company and their investors to know what's coming down the pipe as far as expenses. And as you might imagine, the property tax, or in this case personal property taxes, can be quite an expense depending on how big the solar field is. Not all of them are the size of what Eversource is putting in, but some of them are pretty big.
What's the depreciation schedule on those? I mean,
I
they
have
didn't
not
start up-
depreciated, our first pilot, I have not depreciated it.
Right, well, I guess I'm trying to understand them. If I have my solar field and I say it's a 10-year property maybe?
I'm
and
sorry, it's what?
Say 10-year property, 20, and so I pay a lot the first year, and then as with personal property tax, it dives down pretty quickly.
That's not the way we're writing the pilots.
Right, so I guess, well, the pilots are level, so they're gonna pay much
No.
less in the first year, but it's gonna be level all the way through.
No, the pilots are on an escalation basis, actually.
Okay,
I'm basing the pilots on the fair market value of the property as we go into it. And then for the one that we did get signed, there is a 2.5% escalation every year through the 20 years.
so why do they wanna be in it if they could have depreciation with just the normal personal property tax rules? What's their incentive to do
Well,
this?
their depreciation may vary, the property taxes may vary, and it's very possible that even with the escalation for the taxes, that they'll end up in a better place. If the taxes go up 2.5%, depreciation goes down a little, but then they replace something or they add something to it, and then I pump up the value again, as I would assume if something goes wrong and they have to take a bunch out, and they're gonna put a bunch back.
Right. if
So
renovate-
they get the benefit of knowing exactly what they're gonna be paying over the 20 years. The
do they
pilots have to
Start
be.
out lower, or they start
No,
out?
they start out, I use the base of the fair market value. And the IGRs that I've read for electric generation say that our pilots have to be based on fair market value, so.
Makes sense.
What happens after 20 years?
After 20 years, all bets are off and we start all over again. And basically see where we are as far as the technology and, you know, what's going on in the market, and does the technology change so much that they take the whole system down and put something else there? Does the lot get redeveloped? Those are questions for 20 years down the road.
And is this, it's based on the fair market value of the property?
Of the personal property going
Personal
into
property.
the solar,
So they are taxed for the physical property
correct.
As an industrial
as an
zone.
industrial zone piece of property that escalates 2.5% per year or whatever it may be.
Well, we're talking two different
I
taxes.
know, we're talking about two different taxes. I just wanted to make sure that the physical property is,
The real estate.
The real
is
estate.
taxed as commercial industrial property.
right, and that
For-
changes
for the-
every year.
Yeah, right
with
along with
our
it.
tax rate.
And that's nothing to do with the pilot.
Correct.
Right, and the pilot is completely different.
There's not to say that we might not go into a situation where we want to pilot both of them, but I have not as of yet.
Is there a way of estimating the amount of money that they're paying through the pilot as opposed to what they would have paid paying personal property tax? Is it a balance? Is it less through pilot or more?
If I had that ability, I'd be sitting on Wall Street right now, so.
So.
Or maybe
so
on my
you're saying
island
it's
after
close
having
then?
been on Wall Street.
Yeah.
I still don't understand why anyone would do it if they could take a depreciation schedule. More than likely, my solar plant's gonna sit there for 10, maybe even 20 years without any major renovations. And
Well, if you're going to keep generating the electricity,
Sure, it's
then
just
you're
gonna
going
sit there
to
in the
keep,
sun and generate electricity.
you're going to keep replacing things as they go.
Right, but if,
Which is gonna stop or slow down the depreciation. So it's not like an accounting depreciation. It's a physical depreciation.
I see these panels, and I didn't know they replaced very many parts. I mean, just the basic
They might
small repair
just
parts here and there.
Replace the panels.
Well, yeah, well, that's a major renovation, they're kind of starting over at that point.
Exactly. So if a bank of panels goes down and you have to replace them, you are ending the depreciation. So it's
For that bank of panels or for the whole field?
for the bank of panels.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, overall, the depreciation schedule doesn't plummet like it would, maybe you think of in an accounting term.
I'm thinking of my car, that when
Yeah,
I buy my
it's-
car, I pay a lot of personal property tax, and
Then it
2 years
levels
later,
out.
it's not that bad. 5 years later, it's whatever, $70 or $50.
Well, this type of equipment has a long life. And so we're talking, 20 years is the norm to run a pilot or to look at a schedule for that.
Right.
There are some towns that might do it a little bit differently, but this is the way we've gone. We've got
I
one.
mean, if they're gonna sign on, terrific, I just don't know why they wouldn't.
You're supposed to say, yay, that's a great thing to do.
It's a great thing, but, I mean, even if they renovate, they're always at market value with the pilot, so they're always paying the maximum
They're
tax.
always going to be a market value anyway. Let's say I didn't write a pilot and we just went with the personal property and
Sure.
it did start to depreciate.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, our taxes keep going up and up and up. So the depreciation comes down this way and the taxes go up this way. So now, if they had been in the pilot, they're in a better place because their taxes didn't go up as much. So it may envelop the depreciation, if you see what I'm saying.
Seems like they're going up 2.5%.
And then if they go back and they are keeping up with the solar field maintenance and everything, then the depreciation is going to be pretty slow. Just like in housing, a 150-year-old house doesn't necessarily depreciate to nothing.
Right, but solar panels are expected to be, the economics of it,
life.
as I understand it, you put it out in the field and you do some minor maintenance and cleaning, but generally, if the thing breaks before 20 years, you've lost money on it.
It seems to me
Well-
their incentive is they're not gonna pay as much. So what's our incentive for doing it?
Well, their incentive and our incentive are two different things. We as a town are not giving away the store here. We are going with full and fair market value. So we're not cutting people deals when they come to town. That's not what we're doing. The benefit to us is to be a good host for them and allow their investors to know what's coming down the pike.
Wouldn't we say the same thing about a rental building, where we'd want to know what my taxes were for the next 20 years while I had my 20-year lease?
That is, first of all, that's not personal property.
There's personal
And
property in there.
there are a lot of different types of properties that towns can write pilots on if they so choose.
Yep. So it would be possible, you said that the underlying real estate might be part of a pilot at some point?
If you wanted to do that, but right now, the underlying real estate is not where the money is in these installations.
Does the town come out ahead?
Don't know.
If we get pilots of this nature, that I've already signed, and that the selectmen have already approved and the town has already approved, then we're doing just fine. But here's the other thing. There have been cases in court where solar fields have been found to be exempt, even these huge commercial ones. If we have a pilot in place, we don't have to worry about that. If we don't, then we do.
What's the exemption based on?
Excuse me?
What's the exemption based on?
It's not a matter of being based on anything. It's the way that the ATB and the court system is reading the really old rules. And in one case, the crux of it was that gentleman said that even on his commercial solar field, he was using the energy for his other properties, even though they weren't anywhere near the solar field. And that was not really what everybody was understanding was supposed to happen. Like, well, Makepeace has an exempt solar field. They use all the electricity right here in town. But, so they're exempt. Just like if you put it on your roof, you're using it, it's exempt, up to 125% or whatever. But on the commercial ones, it's, writing the pilots is protecting our interests going into the future. It's an unknown future.
You send it to the grid to sell, it's taxable if you use it yourself somehow.
The original rules were written basically thinking about homeowners with solar on their roofs. I do know that there are bills, there's at least one bill being considered now to rewrite those regulations to make them a little bit more clear for these large installations that we're seeing. But, so that's a big reason to have the pilots, is to protect ourselves.
So are we going to keep track over time as to what, in fact, would have happened if we not had this compared to having it, to see if we actually, this is going to come up again in 20 years, or maybe before?
Well, in 20 years, it's going to be a completely different market, and I'm not sure that it's
Whatever,
even...
there must be some way to keep track of what it would have been had we not done this.
To what end? To find out, to do what with it?
To find out whether this is a good deal for us or not.
Well, one of the reasons it's a good deal for us is it may be either this or nothing.
I understand, there's always that possibility,
But
but there's always a possibility that won't happen. All I'm suggesting is we ask you, is this better or worse than if we just tax them? You don't know. Well, there's a way to find out, which is to pretend you are taxing them and see what we would have got over the course of time versus what we're getting. And then we have a better idea whether we should continue to do this or not.
But without this, we don't have the comparison.
Well, they still report their personal property holdings, it's still calculated.
Well, I mean, it can't be that.
Whether Jackie has time to do that or not, I don't know. Probably got other things going
Well,
on.
when it comes to personal property is one of the things that we still, especially in the case of large solar installations. I am a commercial appraiser, but I am not a personal property appraiser. We do have a vendor that does that for us. I could, for everything that we put in pilot, I could possibly ask them to track it, but it'll just cost us some money. As if it was.
If we were to do that, just as an outsider, I'd suggest doing a couple, if you
Not all
go
of
in
them.
that direction, rather than all of them, so
So which ones do we pick? Because they're all different, and they're all different values, and they're all different systems, so.
yeah, but the middle ones that represent.
I guess I'm not sure that that is indeed going to help us figure out anything, because once we sign the pilot, we're in it.
I know, but as you say, things change over time. So these pilots may not last their lifetime, okay? They can come back in and ask them to negotiate for a variety of different reasons. We may want to, But it seems to me that if we're going to do this, we need to have some idea of whether it's a good deal or not. Typically, pilots are done with not-for-profit institutions, don't pay any tax. So you know it's a good deal because they don't have to pay tax. So anything you get is a good deal. That's not the case.
I think is also suggesting that if we do this for 2 years and track it, and then the next one comes on, at least we have 2 years comparison, and in 5 years, we'd have 5 years comparison, so that the next field, we'd know whether it's pilot or not. That's kind of where you're going.
Yeah.
Not that
And if
we're
the-
locked into this one and, well, it was good or it was bad, and that's terrific information, but assuming
Like I
there's
said,
more
if-
coming on every
If
few years.
I can sign up with the vendor to track them, but if we're gonna track them, we should track all of them. Because you can't pick one or the other and say, these are represented,
Well, how many
because
do we
they're all
have?
very different. We have 9, right now, that are either in use, under construction, or in process.
What prevents you from having a standard pilot?
The value of the property, we are using a standard pilot. That's why we wanted to get this one signed, because that is our base. And as I go through and negotiate the rest, that I bring this and say, this is what we've done, and this is what we want to continue to do.
Now, is this comparable to what other towns have done, and have other towns found this to be a
Some
profitable way of doing
towns,
business?
well, I personally don't know anybody who's not trying to do this. I don't know all 351, assessors or boards of assessment. But it is a hot topic and has been since I got here, and is talked about constantly as far as how people do things, how does the state gonna react, and, what are we up against? And if I didn't think it was very important, I wouldn't say, hey, let me spend all this extra time doing this and have the Board of Selectmen do this and everybody else get involved to do this for these companies. But there are other ways to do it. Other towns are doing it on a per megawatt basis. They do some calculations and do it on a per megawatt basis. There are some towns that may still do their values by an income, which came and went as a preferred method, but these are changing a lot. We are not depreciating the property. We are doing an escalation, and from the people that I've talked to, they thought that was pretty good. Not to get.
It sounds great, I just don't know why they would sign on to it, I guess is what incentivizes them.
Because the way they buy and sell the properties is based on, income and expenses. And to know exactly what your expenses are gonna be 10 years down the road helps them to revert the rates.
Many of them don't own the land, and the land leases are laid out for the whole 20 years.
So they know what their lease payments are gonna be, they know what their
They know what the
taxes are gonna be,
escalations are.
they know what,
It minimizes some level of risk for them for
It does,
future
yeah.
planning, which might be the trade-off for them. That they would rather have the lack of uncertainty.
Yeah. No, I do, I guess I understand that, but I think I'd roll the dice on it.
So the trade-off for us, correct me if I misunderstood you earlier, that this is some sort of bargaining position for us?
it's not,
In terms of us being more hospitable as a community?
well, let's put it, excuse me for 1 minute. It's with the dry one on. For us, doing the pilots, helps us help them.
Which is a benefit for us, what, long term? Is the expectation that there's gonna be growth in this industry for us as a community?
Yes, well, we've seen that even just in the past 3 years that I've been here. There were 1 or 2, and then there's just been an influx, which is one of the reasons we're looking at the bylaws and everything now to kind of figure out how we can do this, in a good way. But there's also the pilots, the benefits to us are taking out the uncertainty for us. So if I've got, let's say, just not representing anything, $10 million worth of solar pilot. I've got $10 million worth of personal property in solar, and we didn't do the pilot, but we've got $10 million out there that we're taxing. That's a good chunk of change that can help fuel our snow and ice and our assessor's salary and, you know, everything else that we need to do. And if we get to a point where they decide that all solar is exempt and we don't have those pilots in place, we lose all of that at once. And we don't get it back.
So
And
the
we don't
pilots-
get anything going forward.
Pilots don't have a back door in the event the courts make the taxation.
No, once the pilot's in place, it's in place. So they change the rules, we still have our pilot.
I don't mean to suggest that this is not a good idea, but the reality is, financially, we don't really know. And so all I would ask is that you give us some thought as to how we can at least try to get a handle on what these are compared to, assuming they didn't become exempt, but they just pay taxes. Even if it's a relatively short period of time, so that we have some confidence in the future that this is a good way to go.
I understand what you're saying. and-
Particularly if, like, 6 months from now, they rewrite the rules so that these places will not be exempt. Okay? Which is the direction it's gonna go. They're
You
gonna
think so?
clarify, yeah. Yeah, I don't think the state's gonna say a whole bunch of commercial places can just do this and be exempt from paying taxes. I think it's unlikely that that will
But it's possible.
happen.
But
Of course it is,
except for
but-
the two
but
court
I'm not
cases.
suggesting we don't approve this. I'm just saying that there are ways that we could actually compare what would have been versus what we're doing, so that in the future, as things change, we get a better idea whether this makes sense or doesn't make sense. Obviously, if for a business, it gives them certainty, it gives us some protection, because we don't know what's gonna happen with the regulations. But if those regulations change, in particular, we wanna know what the difference is, right? Because one of
Absolutely.
your big concerns is it'll all go away. But if, in fact, that's not gonna happen, I think as a town, we wanna know if this makes financial sense. Maybe
Absolutely.
it makes sense just because we've got nice steady payments and we can figure it out and plan. You know, I don't-
Jackie, have you done a cost-benefit analysis of pilot payment in lieu of taxes versus personal property taxes over a 20-year period? And how does the town come out?
I have not done that because I can't predict the future. I can't do that.
You know what the depreciation rate is.
I could probably get a depreciation schedule from our vendor, but I don't know what the taxes are going to be.
You know what we historically have done for increases in taxes over a period of time.
Yes.
It's the same rate it says.
Isn't personal property the same as
Yeah.
real
It
estate?
is. It is.
All right, so we know it's
It
going
is.
to go up 2.5% a year.
Well, no, taxes don't always go up 2.5% per year. That's kind of,
I would like to see a pro forma taking an imaginary unit with a $10 million solar installation and project the income using depreciated values of the equipment. Just depreciate it over 20 years. Forget about any improvements or anything else, as against a pilot. I'd feel much more comfortable in voting for it if you could say, yes, the town comes out even.
How long would it take you to do that, Jackie?
I'm right in the middle of trying to do values. This is my really, really busy time, trying to set the tax rate and do values. This is not something I can do in a day or a week.
Oh, you should be able to do it within a week. I mean, someone should be able to do this within a week. And someone must have considered this.
I will talk to my vendor on Monday and see what kind of depreciation schedule I get. I will pick a project and follow it through, and I'll estimate the taxes going forward based on the history in Wareham.
I would appreciate
but
seeing that.
Then I'd have to use a, okay.
I guarantee the vendor's done this before.
Pardon me?
I guarantee the vendor's done this for people before.
I'll check it out.
Okay, then, with all due respect, Jackie, we'll put this on hold until you get the report, and if necessary, we'll just publish for an explanation, because we have to go to the printer, that we're awaiting further information.
Sure, and yeah, I won't even have the pilots negotiated until next month, so gotta get that tax
I
return.
don't want you to leave thinking that we think this is a terrible idea, or you're not doing a good
No,
job.
I'm doing this for the town, so it's whatever the town wants me to do is what I'm gonna do, and whatever makes you guys feel comfortable is what I wanna do. Don't get me wrong, that's not my, it's not like I don't wanna do it. It's
No,
just,
no, no. No, it's
I
just,
understand that.
It's just I'm right here, right now, that's
right,
it.
but we are too. We're trying to make a decision financially for the town, and I'd like to have something that says, yep, I've done a pro forma, this is what we get over 20 years with the pilot, this is what we get over 20 years with personal property tax, this is what other towns have projected, and this is a good deal for the town.
Excellent,
And
okay.
I'd like to be able to sell that to the town meeting.
Okay,
And without that, it's hard to sell. It's hard to tell them, well, we think it's going to be a good thing for them, but if we can say you can sell it, I know you can, but if we can say, we've done an analysis, and this is the best deal we can do for the town.
well, if all of the knowledge that I have hasn't been communicated enough to sell it to you, then we definitely need to do this, so.
If you can, I'd
All right,
really appreciate
sure.
it.
Thank you very much, Jackie.
Thank you.
Sandy, I think you're in the middle of the meeting across the hall, are you not?
We're done.
You done?
Yes, we finished.
Why don't you join us then?
Solar laws are gonna change, like drastically and constantly.
Mhm.
It's growing so fast,
Oh, it is?
so it's gonna be hard to lock down a certain people. Do you agree?
Well, it's like any other investment that a company makes, whether they're building a solar farm or a nuclear power plant.
Right.
And the legislature is trying to catch up,
Right.
Yeah,
so you never know what they're gonna do unless the lobbyists talk to them.
but it is changing so drastically.
Oh, yes.
Hi, Sandy.
I had,
Sandy?
Article 26, the Community Preservation Headwaters Replacement Housing. Had a few questions.
okay.
Could you just do your presentation again? This is primarily, if I understand it correctly, this house or building will house a group of people with a particular syndrome.
Yes. It would be a affordable, deed-restricted affordable home for 4 individuals with a particular type of, I'm going to say disability. And it's very similar to, we have one of those homes in Wareham already on Peter Cooper Drive, and it's the same individuals. They have a eating disorder, and they have to be monitored. And so what they're looking for at this particular dwelling is an additional one in the town of Wareham. They have a home, they have a property in Orleans, and they're selling, and the profit for that property, the profit from that sale will be used as a partial payment on 2 homes, one in Sandwich and one in Wareham. So we're looking at putting one in Wareham.
That would be the Prader-Willi syndrome?
I believe, yes,
Oh, yeah, 'cause that was in your original
yes.
paper that I had, yes.
Now, I had given you a copy of their CPA grant request at the last meeting. What I did not include to you was that was the cost of the 2 homes, both Sandwich and Wareham. What we asked them to do is break it down to actual cost for the Wareham unit, and that's the document I have in front of me. So they did ask for their CPA grant, the total cost of the project was just over $2 million, but that's for two different homes. So if you remember looking at the CPA grant, they're looking for $100,000 from our CPA funds against a cost of $2.1 million, but those are two dwellings. The breakout I have in front of me says the cost of the project in Wareham is $1,075,166. $1,075,166 is the cost of the Wareham component that they're looking for, the $100,000 in CPA affordable housing funds.
What kind of place are they buying?
Yeah.
They're building one. It is a unique, each individual will have their own living quarters, and they'll have a common area where they will have social time, they will have like a living room, the kitchen, there will be a room for staff, that structure will be staffed 24/7, so they need room for that person to live there, yes.
So it's going to be, there's going to be 4 bedrooms for the
4 people.
4 people, and then...
And an office area for the person that will be there, you know, the staff that will live, there has to be accommodation for a staff that will live there.
Is this property taxed, or is it exempt from taxes for the town?
Right now, it is, I don't know if they bought it or have purchased it or not, but it is taxed. It's off the corner of Great Neck and Cliff.
I know where it's going to be, I'm just saying...
I don't know what the tax rate is on that undeveloped piece of land.
But when it's
The question
when
is,
it's
what will it be? In other words, is some not-for-profit buying this?
It's not a non-taxable.
It is a non-profit organization that is buying this land.
So why will it be taxable?
I think you asked me if it was taxable, is taxable now because it's undeveloped land.
No, I
Misunderstood the question?
you expressed it much better.
I would expect it, since it's being purchased by a nonprofit, that it will come off the tax rolls. Is that your, yes.
Yeah.
I would expect it would come off the tax rolls.
What is the property? You don't know what the property is now?
I did not look it up, because the purchase of the land is not part of this project. They're asking for money for the affordable housing deed restriction.
What is the benefit for the town?
Good question.
Taxes on the land.
Yes,
Undeveloped land, so it's not that
It's
much.
not a lot,
but
it's not that much money though, yeah.
No.
but it's, you can ask the same question as what happens when they have that property on Peter Cooper Drive. It's just the idea of helping people that need assistance.
Well, it sounds like there'll be a staff, so there'll be local jobs.
There'll be staffs, yes.
People may buy houses here eventually if they don't have them now.
I mean, who's to say? There will be 24/7 staff. I'm sure there will be cleaning there will be people getting employment at this site in order to support the 4 people that are living there.
It adds 440Bs to our inventory.
It would be 4 units to our inventory, yes, because it would be
Nickel
affordable.
and diming these is probably a good thing rather than building some giant monstrosity.
I mean,
But that's a different thing.
Let me see,
I personally am a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, and we are looking for more smaller development sites in town as opposed to a big 40B. We'd rather fund those that are taking care of fewer people but become more of a character within the town of Wareham at what we have already for buildings, and as opposed to being a big apartment dwelling. We would like duplexes or things like that
We
just,
did something like this last year. Father Bill's, was it?
yes.
Is that, has that worked out? Have they finished the renovations? Is that moving
Yes,
along?
Mr. Slavin I received a letter from them giving them an update. Mr. Slavin read it to the selectmen's meeting last night. Father Bill's, they have redone the roofing, redone the heating system and the water system and the carpeting and the linoleum, and they have 2 people living in there now. They will have 2 more people living in there by mid-October, and it will have 2 more people coming in mid-November. And the 2 that are living now are from Wareham. So I mean, here is Father Bills, who was a affordable housing deed restriction, have homes for 6 people.
I think what we're missing the context here. What we're effectively doing as a finance committee is approving your transfer from your funds of $100,000 to this entity.
No. The Affordable Housing Trust has already approved that $100,000. This is $100,000, additional $100,000 from CPA funds.
That's what I mean. We're approving the transfer of that monies from your CPC to this entity.
Yes, CPA funds would be set down by $100,000 in order to give it to this company, to this organization. I thought you were talking about the $100,000 that the Affordable Housing Trust has allocated for this project.
No, we're approving a more narrower thing than
Yes.
the discussion has been
Yes.
thus far.
How big is the parcel?
I think it was in the paperwork. I'm trying to remember, I can't remember how big the parcel is off the top of my head, but I think it was included in the grant request. It's probably in there someplace. I would have to, I don't know. It's more than an acre.
Can I ask the CPA, CPC funds are supposed to be used for outdoor space, affordable housing, and
Historic preservation.
it seems like we do a good job with open space, we bought a whole bunch of land.
Open space has been, the Wareham Land Trust has been very proactive in identifying and bringing forward to the preservation of open space.
And we've done
And-
reasonably
and
well with the
along
historic
with-
preservation.
Along with open space / recreation, so we've had funds to upgrade several playgrounds in the area, so we are good in that.
Now, we have to spend a certain amount on affordable housing, or is there, how does it, I guess I'm trying to
We-
figure out how it all works.
CPs, we have to reserve 10% of our expected revenue each year in those 3 categories: open space, housing, and historic preservation.
In the housing area?
Yes, we have almost 600,000 that we haven't spent in the housing area.
Is that gonna cause us some heartburn someday if we don't start spending it, or is?
No, but it doesn't
Not that
look-
I'm advocating to spend frivolously on anything.
No,
But,
I mean, but the funds have been earmarked for affordable housing. And there have been 2 attempts in the recent town meeting to bring forward a project for the Agawam Housing Authority, but the selectmen have refused, majority of the selectmen voted not to put it on the warrant. And these were units that would have been built at Agawam for our residents that need a home. So we have been working with various projects to get affordable housing through CPA, but the selectmen turned down 2 projects recently. They did support this project.
Yeah, it's here, so they must have. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand how it all works.
Yeah, we have a substantial amount of money building up in that pot.
Are there any other questions?
Dominic, you want to pass
I
that
make
to
a
the
motion
chair?
to-
Sure.
What you have there is they break out as the Wareham cost versus the total cost, because if you looked at 2.1 million seemed high, but it is for 2 structures.
Motion's been made, do I have a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy.
Dave, see you for capital planning tomorrow morning at 9? Capital planning?
Yes.
Okey-dokey. Thank you.
The next issue, Ken?
Hi, Kelly.
I think it's the Article 12, expedited printing. Permitting. Permitting.
So the structure is. No.
This is chapter 43D, expedited permitting. It's a program of the state whereby we identify parcels that we're going to expedite permitting for, so that we guarantee that all permitting will take place within 6 months. That means from start to building permit being issued. And with that, the owners of the property get to market their property on the state list. But what I hope to do with this is that when we go through this look and see what our permitting process is all about, that we figure out ways to make it more efficient and more coordinated. So it's a better permitting process, and from that, not only have it for these sites that are identified in the article, but to go beyond that and have it for across the town as a permitting process. It makes it more efficient and more effective and clearer to everybody involved.
I think the original question was that there were only 3 mentioned in the article. And how do we expand that?
We expand that by inviting people in and saying whether or not they want to have their property. Because what we did was, in this process, to find those 3, was made a lot of phone calls, put out a notice saying anybody that wants to have their property for consideration under 43D, let us know. And it took calls to individuals to find these parcels of land. Plus, we have the town Tremont Nail Factory as one of the parcels in
What
the.
happens if we don't meet the deadline? Or do you just deny it if you can't pay?
They get their permits.
Well, it forces the town to be proactive.
It forces the town to complete the process. And I don't think there's high risk in that. In looking at the permitting process, there are some outliers, like Bay Point, that have taken 2 years to get the permitting process complete. But most of the permits happen within several months, within 3 months time period. So it's not like this is an onerous problem with for developers or for the landowners, or for the town to accomplish the permitting in that time frame.
I guess I'm confused in that you're adopting Article 43D, but then within the motion, you have specifics of just those 3.
That's right, because
Are
those
we
are the
limiting
only,
ourselves just to those 3 based on 43D? How does that open it up to anybody else?
at next town meeting, we can put an article in. If anybody actually, if there is somebody who's listening tonight and wants to have their property included in the expedited permitting, I'd be happy to do an amendment to include those properties in this process. These are just the only ones we found.
So you can't make this generic that anyone that wants to come in. But I guess the question is, a town meeting's coming up, and the day after that, somebody comes in and says, hey, this is a great program, I saw it at town meeting, can I be involved? And you're like, well, I've got to get town meeting permission in 6 months to then put you on the 6-month schedule.
Well, what I'm hoping is that we figure out from this expedited permitting process what makes sense in terms of efficiency and effectiveness in permitting, and use that regardless of whether or not they're in the 43D permit process or not. The benefit to them being in this program is the state marketing of their property.
But I guess I'm saying if the day after town meeting, if someone comes along, I think everyone here would like them in the program the day after town meeting, not 6 months later, and then they start. So there's no way to make this more generic so that there's some other, and so anybody can come in and if they quote make.
No, unfortunately, the program requires that we identify parcels that are going to be.
That's why I guess what we didn't understand and we weren't quite getting
So,
across.
as an example, Bay Point, we would have had to specifically put an article in to allow Bay Point to be covered by the 43D versus what they went through.
Correct. But I'm hoping that what we learned from this process is that we don't have another 2 years to get a project approved.
Right.
So we have every 6 months, because that's when we have our annual town meetings. So that's when the articles would be through to cover any new commercial enterprise that would enter the town, correct?
I think what he's saying is, we got this program, let's do these, but I want to get these done in less than 6 months anyway, as a standard routine for every project that comes forward.
But to get them on the
That's right.
state marketing thing, they have to go through this.
Yes.
So we could give them everything except the state marketing the day after town meeting.
Correct.
And there's no financial impact between the expedited and the regular process. I mean, there's no, the fees are the same for the town.
The fees would remain the same.
Yeah, so
They could be the same.
Maybe less late. So I can get the write-up properly, done properly. The state marketing is called,
I'll get you the name of that. It's the interagency permitting board that runs the program.
What would have happened if we had this for Bay Point, and they had all that controversy, and we couldn't get it done in 6 months? What would have the project been?
Well, I just have to recognize that in Bay Point, there was a court case and in that, all bets are off. All the permitting process was complete in that first go-around. But the developer sued the town and took it back to court, and then took it back into a mediation process that required additional time before it came back again to the planning board to have the review and the revision, modification of the plan. So, in fact, the original process was pretty close to 6 months as it was.
If you left off the court for a time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Would we vote to accept this? Favorable action?
Motion to accept, do I have a second on Article 12?
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you, Ken.
I'm abstaining.
Oh, wait a minute, do we have something else?
I don't know, do you?
For Article 14, amending the
You're
town.
abstaining?
One abstention.
Oh, one abstention, my apologies.
That's why we didn't vote last week. I work for one of the companies. So,
I know.
So you should,
just send me that name as an email it.
Sure.
You don't have to drag it in back into us.
Okay.
Now, Article 14,
Zoning bylaws?
you have to vote to add solar energy generation facility regulations. Have they completed the discussions regarding that regulation?
No, they have not. They're going to take it up again on October 16th.
Under the circumstances, it would be appropriate for us not to take any action then. I would suggest that.
I would assume not. If you have any recommendations, we'd happy to hear them.
Who's considering this now?
The planning board
So there's a hearing on the 14th,
on the 16th.
16th, excuse me.
Is there anything so far that, I'll probably write some of this up already soon, but anything that seems controversial in what
The
they're...
only thing that's controversial is the where we will allow large solar generating facilities.
in general,
Right now,
is,
the
any commercial industrial area with certain setbacks, or is there something more strict or less strict in mind?
the setbacks would be greater in the bylaw. And because what we've had, the problems we've had are where the solar fields are visible to residential properties, thereby affecting their property value.
The current Eversource on Toby is they got agreements from Eversource to create certain types of buffer zones, so it's not viewed from the street.
Well, that's in the zoning regulations, Article 10, the landscape regulations require berms and vegetative buffers along the street line. So essentially what we were doing was getting Eversource to conform to the zoning regulations with.
Right now, where are solar installations allowed? Any industrial?
They're allowed anywhere in the town under state law. The determination of the building commissioner was that when although it's not a listed use in the zoning bylaw, that it's, although it's not listed, it is permitted by special permit by state law. So that the building commissioner determined that the special permit would be issued by the zoning board of appeals for those installations. So we have 9 installations, as you heard earlier, in town, under either built or under construction. Most of them are in the R130 and the R60 zoning districts.
Residential areas.
Yeah. And I don't think that most people know that where those are constructed at this point, because of the buffers are so sufficient for the most part, that other than the people that are directly adjacent to these fields, most people don't know that they exist.
So if we have an existing bylaw that we can make these people do what we want them to do, why are we amending this?
And we don't necessarily can't make them do what we want them to do. What this does is helps us in a couple ways. One, it makes it clear what the standards are for buffers that we were looking for in the projects. And secondly, it puts us in order to get green communities designation, which would allow us to get grants for building improvements that come along with green communities designation. So it's to clear up some confusion about buffers and to get us in line for Green Communities program.
All right.
This is the last piece for green communities, or we've got a lot more to do?
No, there are 5 criteria. The electric cars out there are 1. This bylaw would be 2. The big issue is going to be the stretch code, and that's the building code for environmental standards for construction. And the standard building code now has been advancing over the years, and it's pretty close to what the stretch code is. So we're hoping that people will see that the difference between the two is so slight that it isn't really going to make that much of a difference to adopt the stretch code locally, which would help us in one of the criteria.
Any further questions? As the fact that the article is incomplete, however, I'm going to entertain a motion to take no action.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
So I guess, are we gonna get this ready for before printing? Will we have something from,
If their meeting is until the 16th, no, it's unlikely we'll have printing. I'm hoping.
it sounds like something
Kelly and I
many
can
of
put
us
it-
probably want to support, so should we just read an explanation once we get there, put an explanation up?
If no one has objections, I encourage you to write to the effect that, yes, we are in support of it,
Well, we could
whoever the
vote just
final action had
before,
been taken by the
we
time.
could vote just before town meeting, the
Right.
way we
Yes.
always
Right.
do,
Mhm.
and then we could have an explanation ready to go.
Have a yay
Assuming-
and nay, have it both ways.
assuming
Fire in
everyone,
whichever one you need.
Yeah,
Yeah, oh, of course.
Yes.
We've done it so many times before. I mean, that's a routine pretty much for us
all
now.
right.
But at this point in time and
Claire
take our
doesn't like
votes.
us reading things anymore, but we could read one.
The
She'll
Board of Health
forgive us
voted in
for
favor.
one infraction, I
Board of
think.
Health voted in favor.
yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Why would they vote in favor if it was incomplete? Does that make sense?
That was their choice.
That was their choice.
No, I guess. but
I mean, being incomplete, there's only a couple of things that aren't being questioned in the bylaw right now. And it's a couple of blocks in the use table, and it's a couple of different phrases in the bylaw itself. There isn't really too much being questioned overall. In the,
It feels like it's
bylaw.
generally complete.
You believe it's pretty minor, Ken, if that's what you're trying to say?
Well, I think it's significant, these changes, but in terms of the text overall, it is minor.
Makes sense. Makes a little more sense.
Mentioned 5 criteria and then stated 3. Do you know the other 2 off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head.
Probably something I can look up.
Yeah.
I'll look that up. Maybe we can put the idea into people's head that there might be grant money if we finish these 5 things.
Yeah.
I
could
can't
be-
believe a couple of electric cars are one of them. It's like token effort. 3 out of the 60 cars are electric.
Well, there'll be more, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, we'll get them for the police department. They'll,
They'd like Teslas.
no, not Tesla.
You know, there's a Tesla
Think the
charging
batteries will
station
last
gonna
the
be
whole
coming
shift?
into Wareham Crossing.
They
There's
only
a
have
what?
30 miles.
There's a Tesla charging station that's gonna be built at Wareham Crossing.
Oh, really?
Who's doing that, Ken?
Tesla.
Tesla's doing
That's
that.
why they do it themselves,
Yeah.
huh?
But do those charge like a Nissan Leaf or a Toyota Prius or something, or are they just Teslas?
Just Teslas.
They've got their specific.
Tesla has a proprietary system. I don't know if they're gonna be
It's
doing
gonna
it for their own
service
or
all,
not. But,
zero cars we have on the earth, and Teslas.
but
I see those
VW,
Teslas now and then, and they're like $100 grand. I'm like,
yeah, they do get expensive.
yeah, I know the new ones are coming out soon, but
VW has a mitigation program because of the emissions snappy that they went through.
Yeah, they were.
And they are putting charging stations around, so we'll have ones that'll probably be more in line with charging up
I wonder if the charging stations are proprietary or they're gonna be universal. That's the key.
I believe they're generally universal, but Tesla marches to their own. You know, Musk does his own thing.
I think maybe you just put a card in, charge.
I know they have them in Brookline.
Well, Teslas were
in
free
parking
for a long
lots
time.
In any
Oh, is that
place.
right?
Yes,
So they
Yeah.
work for
they charge them free.
Yeah.
Maybe you just have to get an adapter.
But if it becomes universal, then somebody will be paying for it.
Right, oh, yes.
Universal, yeah.
Right.
So do you have a question on Article 15?
We just did.
Probably.
No,
You did 14.
we did it last week.
Okay.
We approved it last week.
I think that covers everything then.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ken.
If that's the case, then you gotta pay.
Mm-hmm.
Town should look into getting a fee on it.
Depends too about the duration that takes you to charge, how much you get.
Okay, let's, for instance, I'll throw out a stupid number. Say it costs you $30 to charge your car. We should get 10 or 20% of the town charge, get that as a fee.
Why?
Oh, indeed, we
Why
could.
not?
Well, why?
Because
That's
we're
up
trying
to-
to encourage electric car use. And,
It's a way to make money.
Well, the way to do it is
We
put
tax gasoline.
them in a,
Why
Not
shouldn't
at
we
the
tax
town level.
put them in a parking lot, and you gotta pay for parking.
You can do it that way too, pay for the parking spot. I don't care, I just.
And you got a spot where you can
just
plug
put
in.
a meter right in front of it.
I'm just looking for a way to make money, that's all.
Yep.
Can I make a suggestion? I
Yes.
think we've gone quite far afield. Shall we
Yes.
come back to
Just
what we're
about
doing,
the
what we're
Tesla-
doing here?
Tesla users pay only.
Article 19, which is the authorization of the sale of 505 Main Street, which is WCTV headquarters,
Mm-hmm.
Old Town Hall. Steve Ruiz, I spoke with him, he's the chairman. He's running a board of directors meeting this evening, so he was unable to join us. He did give me some information, however. A, the WCTV, which is 501c3, has the money in hand to purchase and do the renovations and expansion that they plan to do. So there's no fundraising that's going to take place once they authorize. What we're doing here, however, is he can't do that until they have possession of the building. And to put it another way, what we are effectively doing is changing the custodial ownership of the building, because within the deed it will say when they abandon the building, it reverts right back to the town.
Do we have to,
Irrespective of what improvements they've made to it, it just all comes back to the town, one big package.
Can we sell the building without putting it on the market or getting bids? Just preference, can we preference them without any?
It is going to be written as such, yes. I talked to Derek about that.
Okay, so we
What's the
don't.
sales
So
price?
if
He's
someone else
gonna,
was
he does
interested
have
in
to
it-
go out to bid,
Oh, it does have to. go
yes.
out to bid.
I was gonna say, that's legal, that's law.
Yeah.
What are they proposing to purchase it for?
So they can do the addition
No, no,
2
no,
years?
how much?
Oh, they haven't determined that. It's not going to be a great deal of money,
Yeah.
but that's still in
That's what I wanted to
negotiation.
know.
Yeah,
I didn't get an answer.
So what do they want us to
it
approve?
does have to go to bid.
The sale.
for that.
That they allow them to do that transaction. I mean, there's no reason to go through the negotiations unless they have permission to do the
So
negotiations.
the approval is just, if we can reach agreement on the sum of money, you can have it.
Yes,
And the selectmen will approve the sum of money
correct.
on bids.
Yeah, burning question.
Yes.
Well, it asks about the bid. What if for some oddball reason someone wants to bid higher?
It's more a case of writing the bid to say that a certain entity has the priority or has or conforms to what the specifications in the bid are. Write it so that,
So it's rigged.
Nobody's gonna wanna
Yeah.
buy,
Yeah, but
which
that's,
is
nobody's
different
gonna
comment.
wanna buy a piece of property where they can't sell it.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Why would you do that? if we're
Now
not
that you put it
for
that
profit?
way, I understand. Makes
I
a little
also
more
asked them
sense.
if it was appropriate, since we do have other buildings in town, can you move? And he said, because of the way they remodeled the inside, all the equipment and everything they have installed,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be cost effective to move to another building, have to air condition the building, cable it, model it inside to accommodate
The
their
studios
needs.
and everything else.
Indeed, yeah.
Okay.
So on Article 19, authorize sale of 505 Main, may I have a motion? Motion is made, may I have a second? Motion is made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote.
Just like yours, why do they want to hold it?
So they can so they can add to it.
Can't we just give them permission to do that?
Sounds like no.
I think in terms of funding and all, they have to have possession,
Okay.
something to that
Doesn't
effect.
matter if we-
The next one, 17, Stone Path. Eric and I met yesterday and we went through a few issues, so he was aware of what your concerns were. Can you pass that on? And then most of your questions were regarding what are we going to get, what are we losing, and how is it replaced? In the first, the top chart is the taxes for the fiscal year in terms of the TIF, how much we're going to get, they're getting for a, excuse me, a credit. And the second chart is their personal property tax. They're bringing in, I think, about $1.5 million worth of equipment. And that'll be the personal property. And so the two charts, if you compare the ultimate totals, in one case, the total benefit is $67,000 to Stone Path in terms of what they're going to save or we're going to lose in terms of collections. And in personal property, we're going to make $107,000 or $108,000.
Plus meals tax.
And jobs.
Mhm.
What is this? What are they? No, I understand the numbers. What is this entity?
These guys take hops and whatnots and,
Oh, I remember,
manufacture
oh, yeah,
them into
okay,
pellets.
I got it, yeah.
Then they
Right,
send them
this is
out
good.
and then
Beer.
the beer comes back.
The house capital of the universe.
Yeah, they sell base ingredients for beer and then they have a little restaurant.
Okay.
And that was Article 13, in which we've already approved the additional liquor license. It was essentially for them so that they can,
So Bernie, this 20 to 27,000 is, I guess I'm just, if you go across the chart for me to
Yes.
explain the count.
yeah. And I want you to know, I just saw the chart tonight,
Okay.
so if I don't know what I'm talking about, I have an excuse. But that's what, they're gonna pay something anyway. In the first year is 2018, obviously, they're getting the 100%. And the TIF exemption, as it goes down, 80, 70, 60, 50 would be the last. And the percent of the payment and what the actual payment will be.
Okay, so we're getting 20 of the base tax, there's a base tax of 94,000 that we're going to get anyway.
No,
No,
That's
that's
what-
what's
that's
in
what
play,
happens.
that's what's in play.
we're getting 27 of that, they're saving
We're saving
67.
67,
But
okay.
we're getting 100% of the personal property tax.
The 47, okay. So we're getting 27
Well,
and 46.
Over those 5 years, we
Yeah.
will get in personal
Okay.
property 107, and the
Well,
benefit is,
personal property, it's
Yes,
all listed. Right.
Files.
So Neil's tax,
Sales
personal
taxes
property,
here, personal property
fire
tax.
district, tax, benefits to all increase.
Nice.
now I hope Derek is, it goes,
As if they, as if they weren't there, we wouldn't be getting.
yeah.
So
And hopefully they'll employ some people who will be.
Yeah, they say that's about 12 people.
hopefully
And
they'll
considering what they're
join.
doing, they would be high salary people. And Derek has mentioned
Can we
meeting
mandate
these.
they live in Wareham and pay taxes?
And I did a
Kids are not.
search of all the craft brewers in Massachusetts, and there are upwards of 100 of them, and you do all of New England, and that more than triples. So their market in our general area has a very great potential.
It's tremendous.
So there's a potential market of 100 breweries
Yes, craft brewers, yeah.
in New England, you said?
Yes. Oh, I ought to do something here, don't I?
Not that we need to advocate their business plan,
Oh, but
but add some color.
I would like to see this for the pilot program. Is a,
Yeah, you have a very valid question.
I don't see a difference between, the solar and say, I'm building a rental building, I'm gonna rent it out to a medical practice, I've got a 20-year lease.
Okay,
Just-
moving,
let's just
Anyway,
do this,
moving
right?
But
back
let's
to Article
discuss
17.
this.
We can-
Yeah, back to Article 17. Are there any more
I-
concerns everybody want to express?
no, I'm looking forward to it.
You're looking forward to the,
Sometimes these tips can be hard to sell, so
Yes.
I'll try to write something up and if someone has,
yeah, we only have one other in town.
is that it, just the hotel?
No, the,
What's it stand
the croutons.
The croutons, that one must be older though. The hotel had a TIF.
I believe they did.
for? What does TIF stand for?
Did they add?
It's
What?
Tax increment finance. I move favorable action.
Yes. Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote.
It's Dominic doesn't come up from beer.
Article 28, which is the adoption of cemetery rules and regs. I believe did we all get a copy electronically of that?
Yes.
I haven't finished that yet.
I didn't ask Kathy to come back because I felt that once we had the copy, I'm not sure how deep we want to go for this.
Oh,
That's-
at least 6
That's,
feet.
that's deep enough.
I wanna get to the bottom of it.
It's a dead issue.
Are you writing these down, Alice? I can be part of it. If
Yes.
there's no further discussion, may I have a motion, please?
I move favorable action on Article 28.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
Yes. I haven't read it yet. I'm not gonna vote for it until I've read it.
You're not gonna get through
I said no.
510.
No, you said no or abstain?
No.
No, okay, 501.
501.
No, 510.
510.
it. Yeah, you said no.
Okay, and, let's see. Before we go on, why don't we discuss the establishment of the special ed fund? Because there's no sense voting on the money and we don't have the fund.
But can I just ask a question, Ed? Why wouldn't they just put that in their budget?
It isn't a budget. He budgets for the anticipation of the unknown, which is someone coming into the district sometime during the active school year, fiscal year, which requires transportation to a location outside the district.
Why does it need the town to be obviously isn't in their budget?
Correct. He's trying to offload his budget.
Offload or add to?
Offload it. He wants to offload it from his budget, because he has the money already there, that he has made allowances for. So they're trying to offload that onto the general fund that we appropriate by putting monies into this stabilization.
If he already has the money, is he gonna put that in this fund?
No.
So he's asking for an additional
He's asking
$200,000?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. When I said that a couple of times, so you want more money? No.
Okay. I don't, what is the purpose? It's just, they just miscalculate and what's going on?
No, he just wants to offload it.
He wants a stabilization fund for his mid-year special ed requirements, so they can spend, I guess, their entire budget. And then if someone does come in, they need permission from the selectmen and I think the school committee to
Well,
actually.
did anybody find out within what they set aside for special education funds, how much was this that they want to offload?
It would be their sped budget. I don't have the actual budget in front of me, but it's a line item.
Because, so
Department
they're
in
just
there.
gonna take it out of there and spend it on something else?
Well, now understand, they have a bottom line exclusively.
Well,
What
yeah,
they
but
say is their
so
sped.
they can move line items.
Yes, what they say is sped on paper doesn't necessarily mean that is only all what they're gonna spend. They could, if they have monies left over, move it elsewhere in the budget and do something else with it.
All I'm saying is if they anticipated this and they just want more, how do we know they're gonna spend what they anticipated first before they ask for more?
If they have this, they will spend what they have.
So this is
Highly
gonna
unlikely
come
they're gonna return any money at the end of the
It's
fiscal
gonna
year.
come to us right out of the gate.
When we appropriate their budget for the next annual town meeting, it will be excluding any risk dollars, which they currently have, because they have to plan ahead for the fact that they could have someone coming in.
I understand,
Yeah.
they've been doing that for years.
Yes,
And
yes.
the problem is that this is now just an additional 200,000 so that they can spend 200,000 any way they want that we've already budgeted for this purpose.
Effectively, that's correct.
Why would we do that? What's the point of having a budget?
Well, that's just a kind of a one-year thing though, because then year two, if they have to put any money they get back, gets replaced.
What we've worked out with Michael is that they get reimbursement from the state
I
for,
understood that.
yeah,
I understood.
and their, whatever reimbursement they're going to receive from the state, which they will receive in the subsequent fiscal year, will be put back into this stabilization fund.
So what they have been doing in the past, And I guess, and it's changed, in the past, they would front the money for the new student, and then they would get some reimbursement, so they would spend that money, the reimbursement money, the second year.
They would refund or replenish.
With the new
Some
deal,
of the
then
money.
that changes, so it doesn't feel like they get more money necessarily, but year one, yes, they would have an extra 200,000, they don't, because they're gonna be able to just spend last year's money when it gets reimbursed. That's the extra money they're gonna spend, that
Plus
reimbursement
anything
from last
else
year.
that they may have set aside in there.
Plus, they don't
that
have
we didn't
it,
see in the budget, because it's probably just says spend, but some sub-account in there is for this, because they didn't know we were gonna do this.
Well, the only way they can spend this money is with the approval of the selectmen and the school.
no, but they already have the $200,000 that they actually
Currently.
would have had to
Yes.
put in their own little internal stabilization fund.
Exactly.
And now we're doing that work for them, so,
They're gonna spend that on
so
something
they can
else.
spend that on something else.
It's a $200,000 increase to their budget.
For this year.
Yeah, well, how do we get out of this next year? And this is gonna be forever.
Oh, yeah, to the extent they don't replenish it, they're gonna ask us to do it every single year. That's
Yes.
true.
So how do we do
But then
this?
it's gonna end up being the same, because it's gonna be baked in. We're gonna say, well, we're taking care of this, we're gonna give you 150 less in your budget, so I don't think this really accomplishes
No, we won't.
anything.
We're not gonna do that.
Well, at the end of the day, Derek has this pool of money from all these sources, and this is it, and I guess he's trying to figure out everything, and then give, well, the school and then capital the extra, but.
But we may, if we do the 200,000 this year, it affects this fiscal year. So whatever risk money he has appropriated or set aside instead, he's gonna be able to spend that elsewhere this year.
It just
Next
seems,
fiscal year, we'll know what he's getting.
I know, but it seems that it's gonna vary every year. You know, because you have 3 kids. And so
Yes, it will.
he's not even gonna just come back and ask for 2, it's gonna be, do this, I need 6 of them.
Well, if he gets it, well, excuse me, if he were to get, let's say, 3 kids, which would exceed the 200,000, he has to find it in his own budget.
I doubt it. It's a strange way to run a business. That's all.
It is government. What you express, your concerns, I agree with. Except the only thing I feel in the context of this, we can do it for 1 year, because every year they have to come back to that appropriation as an individual line item that has to be separated, as we do with all the revolving funds.
Next year, it'll just be grouped in with the rest, it'll be housekeeping.
There you go.
Yeah, we'll never talk about it again, I promise. So, you should get all of your concerns out of the way now, because it's housekeeping.
But if you want to, vote on the negative, and if you want to make a comment, Alice can include it.
It just, even if it's just for 1 year, we want to encourage departments to come to us, get a budget, have it approved, and come back for $200,000 more. It's exactly what they're doing.
Mhm.
It just sends all the wrong signals, it seems to me. What if they had asked for 500,000?
You can, yes.
I think the town's going to be in a difficult position ever saying no to this in the future.
I would agree. It's an emotional line item, let's say.
Wonder what the next department's going to be that comes up with this scheme.
Any other concerns anyone want to express? Agree, disagree?
No, I agree with what you're saying. And special education is a hot button in town.
I'm not opposed to spending money on special education. That's not what I'm objecting to.
No.
This doesn't feel right to me. The method being used seems preconceived and puts us in a bad position because it is an emotional issue. They didn't think this up after their budget.
I agree with you. On the flip side, though, I am going to vote in favor. But I do agree with, when he first even presented it, I thought, gosh, most places account for this in their budget, the expectation or potential, and they accept the consequences of it. That's a risk of doing business.
I mean, look, if they run out of money, they can always ask us for money. But this was premeditated. Yes.
How do you think they should have put it?
I think they should have put exactly what they did. They have money in their budget for this. If it wasn't enough, they should have asked for more. That's why you have budgets.
So is the funding limited solely to transportation needs for children outside of the city?
No, I think it's part of their tuition and the like. Primarily, it's primarily transportation because there are some reimbursements involved in it.
That's off copy.
I think it's, now refresh my memory, didn't they at the last town hall meeting, didn't they propose a much higher figure and then come back to the table with a reduced figure?
Yes.
So to me, it's a perfect strategy, but they were asking for more money initially. And there was a lot of pushback from the town because of the limited resourcing that we have available right now.
Oh, they came back, they went
So
up for $1 million.
I wonder if there's a dynamic internally where they're feeling a lot of pressure because they proposed an initial budget, took a less budget, and now they're trying to find creative ways to come up with.
Well, and part of their solution.
I'm just speculating.
It wasn't just cuts. If you remember, a lot of their stuff was expected revenues from things that I don't think are certain at all. So they're gonna run into problems in any, if those don't come through.
It's a true fact.
They had an unusual process last year in the budgetary review. All of their department heads came up, presented a budget,
Right, so
total,
they're saying
far
they get a lot of
exceeded
new, I think it's out of
what we
district
knew was
placements every
available.
year,
Right.
and then every year.
And
some
school committee
change,
voted
some
unanimously to
were
accept
previously
their
believed that,
requests and passed the figure
looks like
on
the figures
to
grow
the
from
selectmen,
year to year.
which gave it to us.
No, it wasn't Christmas.
Those things are
And
crazy expensive.
that was where they went through talking back and forth to effectively end up with a balanced budget, and a lot of it, there were unknowns, and during the course of the process, the town administrator became more aware of the actual figures, and so we had dollars that we were to give to them for an increase, but nothing close to what they originally requested.
So, you know, being relatively new here, would you characterize that behavior last year's as not being typical of what they've asked for in past years? There's a sense to me in which, from a business perspective, you would just simply come in with a big ask.
Initially, perhaps, but under the circumstances of running the government, I say that they did was irresponsible. But I would suggest we weren't as generous as possible.
Yeah. That's what we're concerned with.
Because it still ended up, even with the final number that they received, it was still a percentile, it was still a percentage increase over what they had received last year, correct?
Yes, indeed.
I'm sorry, my memory just, I warned you when we started.
Well, I think what the most frustrating thing about it was when they went through that process, they knew already, right out of the box, that the overall totals of the requests far exceeded the availability, but they didn't go back on their own to renegotiate, so we never knew what the potential or realistic prices, costs were going to be for any particular department. That was the unfortunate part. We were just voting a bottom line, which is the only thing we're required to do. So we never knew what the changes may have been, how it impacted.
I just remember the one time we sat with them, they made the comment that currently one in 4 students in their enrollment right now are classified special ed.
Yes, they're primarily mainstream. There's only a select few
Right.
that are actually what they call steads.
So, I mean, maybe that's just a, so we're asking you to have this conversation.
One thing he hadn't put together for me is I asked specifically for about a 5-year history. Say how many he actually had to accommodate when they came in mid-year, and I haven't got that information yet.
I just know it was a very heated topic.
This is the
And
special ed.
And if the trend in that
Stabilization.
direction is increasing numbers of students with special education needs, then they might be feeling a pinch and they're trying to find ways to, again, just speculate, redirect funds to areas of concern that they feel.
It's unusual for a family with a special ed student that would require out-of-district services to move.
And that's why I asked the question, if that funding was limited exclusively to that need.
The stabilization fund?
Yes.
Yes.
So there's, right, the only thing they would be redirecting is the $200,000 gain that we're anticipating.
In this current fiscal year, yeah. And he's only got 6 months left after this is appropriated. It applies to FY17.
But the
It's
stabilization
gonna
is
sit
very
in that
limited in
fund
what it can be
forever.
used.
Yes, it could, if he doesn't have the needs of it.
If this is a half a year's ask, is it going to be 400,000 next year?
He indicated that he would like to see 400,000. He didn't verbalize that next year he's going to request 400,000. But I mean, that's, would be difficult because I've asked, as I said, for particular information.
Yeah.
That would give us an idea that yes, there is that increased amount or a possibility. But if there's, historically, there isn't, that's basically what we would want to accommodate or appropriate for, would the historical data, not the assumed.
Not, obviously not here last year. I mean, how solid are these budgets supposed to be? If it's set as of July 1st, is there like, there seems to me like an ask, a gimme of 200,000. Is that typical? I mean, over the last 5 years history, is
No, that's not
this
typical
the
at all.
first timer?
Yes. And I have no awareness and haven't even asked if there's anything or any other town that's doing similar, something similar.
Now, just out of curiosity, I don't know the school budget well enough, but there have to be 25 other things in there that they can't know for sure how much they're gonna spend on. So next year is gonna be this plus, well, we got another one kind of like this. Costs have been high the last couple of years, and, you know, we'd like you to create a little fund for that too. And before you know it, you know, I just can't understand, if they run out of money, then they should come and talk to us.
Well, of course, and when you say if they run out of money, they really don't, because they only have the bottom line. They can move their dollars anywhere they want within that.
So are you able to, still learning Massachusetts state law, so your stabilization fund, once it's added to the stabilization fund, it's there permanently? You're not able to attach any sort of horizon to it?
The reason why we can do this is that the acts of 2016 allowed for the creation of a special ed stabilization fund. You can't, I couldn't create the Whopper stabilization fund, so in case I'm extra hungry. And I'm being a little facetious on there, but they do set it on the guidelines. You can set, there's even stabilization funds now that we can set for the police department, believe it or not, on the what's called 111F, which is basically the injured on duty or the workers' compensation for police budgets. Because when our officers go out on 111F, that's still being paid on the budget, and you're paying them during that. But whenever, usually you're backfilling those spots, so it's always time and a half. You know,
How does that work now? The police department within their budget figures it out.
correct.
So if we do this in the school department, why wouldn't the police come next year and ask for the same thing?
My thought, I wouldn't be shocked if we didn't start thinking about that, because what I do is the reimbursements that we get from our insurance company for 111F, you can start putting it into that fund for future issues and such. However, then we're also depleting our free cash, because those are the types of things that we get back that can help build up your free cash. And I can't speak for the school department, for the superintendent or the business manager. My thought on the special ed stabilization fund is really that's something you put some money in there, and then if it's needed, you really have to, you can hit in there. But if it's not needed, you don't ever touch those funds. If this is something that's being hit every year, then you might as well just put the appropriation into even if you can't afford it, then you have to cut from somewhere else.
That is impossible. They're not going to, if they have one of these, they're not going to ask for it. It's impossible. Why would they? This is a $200,000 increase to their budget. Period. End of story. They're going to use it.
If they use the funds out of there, they have to report that on their year-end report as part of their overall budget. If they don't use those funds, it isn't reported as the overall budget. That's just one of the things reading through it. So, I mean, I know in a quick and dirty search, I saw that Cohasset recently did it. A couple municipalities have done it. It's not against I work hand in hand with the school department, but also when it comes time to the scant resources we're all scrambling for, we know that we're fighting against each other for them in a strange way. So it's tough for me to play both sides of the aisle, if you will. I do understand it. Really, my thought was it should be under extraordinary circumstances that you would have somebody. I thought about a year or two ago, I thought they did have somebody that came in and ended up costing about $64,000. When I was looking at some of the reimbursements through Circuit Breaker, I think it was, for Wareham, for FY16 Circuit Breaker, 33 students were eligible students claimed, and the total eligible expenses were $2,482,000 for 33 students. And it's pretty intense. So what do you think if you
It's
get?
outrageous.
But that's already baked in their budget, isn't it?
They have that within the budget, and they probably estimate it amongst the amount of students that they do have. And you try, if I were them, and I don't know with how tight their budget would be, you always try and be conservative. In other words, when I set the budget for the healthcare line, I know that I'm always going to put at least about $150,000 in there above what my current subscribers
They
are.
did that in their last budget. So this is on top of that. And there's no guarantee they're going to spend that $200,000 they've already put aside on this. Instead, they're going to come and ask us for it and tell us they don't have the money. So what we're saying to this school department, and what we're saying to every other department is, give us a budget and then come back and ask for more.
Yeah, because I remember it came up, and I'm sorry to interrupt, it came up before, a few years ago. It was the school committee member, Mr. Flaherty, then, who asked us, he said, well, what happens when you have somebody that retired and you're paying their sick leave, whatever their accruals are? I said, well, after that person leaves, we then hold that position until we've made up the difference. So you don't plan to fill that position? I said, we can't afford to plan that position immediately. My thoughts, would I love to have something like this out there, so when we have a retirement fund, you can draw from that so we can keep the operations going? Yes, but there's nothing like that set up, really. Some towns have it for sick leave.
This essentially, as we've mentioned, is occurring for this fiscal year, and any monies taken out of it at subsequent fiscal years as they're reimbursed from the state, those monies from through the circuit breaker will be placed by the school committee into this fund. They can put it in, but they can't take it out without approval of selectmen.
I don't know their process anymore. I remember they used to roll, I think, circuit breaker from year to year. They didn't try and expend it in one year's budget. That was sort of a nice cushion for, as well, in case of any issues. But I thought that a year or two ago, when things got hard, they ended up eating it in the same year that they got it. So.
Yeah.
But I couldn't tell you where that stands right now.
Michael was discussing with the school committee that any monies that are reimbursed for these individuals that the fund would take care of, excuse me, would be placed back into the fund or reimburse the fund with those reimbursed funds.
Yeah, and that actually functions because circuit breaker doesn't close out at year end. Those funds can carry over. Well, that's what they call the special education reimbursement. And I'm sure there's some reason some clever reason behind circuit breaker, but that's what it's called. But that can carry over from one fiscal year to another, so it doesn't close out. So it could wait for another town.
So
meeting.
shouldn't we at the very least find out how much they've got in that account?
Could certainly ask.
You don't know, but we don't know.
They would. I couldn't pull it off of, my section right now. I could probably ask the town accountant. She would most likely, but
Why don't we hold off on this? We'll take no action. And we'll get the appropriate information that you're requesting, Stuart, and also the historical information that goes back in the past 5 years, how often have they, or would they have impacted such a fund during past history. We have a motion to take no action, please.
So moved.
Second.
Some motions, then moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? To vote? Okay, Article 34, which is the Director for Council on Aging, is, as we've been advised from Missy, will be pulled.
Should we vote no anyway?
Move to take no action. We have a motion to that effect? Would that be appropriate? Yes, that would be appropriate.
I just wanted to vote no.
That's what I'd like to see.
Why was it pulled?
The Director, they felt it more appropriate to bring it up at the annual town meeting or regular town meeting.
It's
And we
also
have-
not funded, so if I understand this right, you have to pull money from somewhere else to fund this meeting.
No, that's fine. The last time I was here,
Yeah.
she came and did the presentation. I was just curious.
I
what
think
had
it's a
changed.
bit of optics on their part that now, if they do it next time, then they don't have to sort of pull funding from someone else to get this done.
Yeah.
That close.
I
You
know
may have
maybe
broken your
magically
assessor.
somebody
Sorry
had
about that.
stepped in and
She'll be up
donated
to-
the money.
she'll be up tomorrow.
volunteered their time or.
And Missy, whom we spoke with, is
Wasn't
the
me.
current acting director, but she was not one of the petitioners. So we are going by indirect knowledge. But I think I should entertain a motion to take no action.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The lips are sticking together here. Okay, Article 4, budget adjustments. I don't think we have any.
Mr. Chairman, that is, if I may, that's in there because in speaking with the Department of Revenue, if the COA director article did go through, we would have an unbalanced budget. So we would need to reduce the other budget lines and make transfers. And, well, we wouldn't have to transfer because they appropriate $66,000. We would have to reduce other budget lines by $66,000.
What we're not gonna happen, correct?
I hope not, but that's a citizen's petition article. There's,
Oh, okay. So we're supposed to work it out.
yeah, the
Yeah.
COA directors.
The floor could very easily refuse to,
So
can they
we say
refuse
no
to allow her to
this.
withdraw, I wonder? Yes, you can, yes, you
Someone
can.
can make a motion to approve,
Mhm.
they could deny the motion to withdraw, pass over.
So if we say no to this one, then they can't fund their thing.
No, we'd have an unbalanced budget, and we'd have to call another town meeting.
Another town
and set
meeting.
our tax rate until we completed it.
Would that be
I
an
kinda like
annual
that
within an
better.
annual within an annual?
That would be a special. A real special.
Good luck getting a quorum.
We don't need a quorum.
Make a motion for approval.
Did I vote for that?
I would suggest a motion to take no action. What do you think, what would you rather?
No, I'm gonna make a motion for approval.
Okay, so moved, may I have a second?
Second.
Motion's made and second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
One opposed?
I think you like this one.
So,
I think that you like this one.
I'm not gonna go for an unbalanced budget either, though.
I just don't feel like we should do it unless we need it.
Motion five, Article 5, approving the union contracts. As you noted, the paper I passed out is $150,000 from free cash, and that will go along with the $100,000 currently on the accounts that we set aside, was it last year or 2 years ago?
It's been a comment, we had set it aside even a few years before that, and then consolidated them into one contract article, and that's what we still have set aside there. I know I'm anticipating at least the police one, because it's going to be a full year retro, plus we're going into this fiscal year of July, August, and September, and essentially October, because you can't do anything until you funded it. That one's looking at approximately $180,000. So I'm being conservative of believing that we'll need the full $250,000 in there.
Are all three of the police contracts done, or just the three of them?
It's, we've already done the sergeants, but this would be the patrolmen. We have the dispatchers on there, and then the lieutenants are the last three outstanding. The dispatchers we have resolved. There's a total of 8 dispatchers. Probably, I think, I'd have to look at about 34 officers on there, so 42. So this, altogether, this will represent about 44 to 45 people, which is almost, when you look at it, it's a little over a third of our FTEs when you, and that's considering the wastewater and the EMS as well. So that's why it's fairly substantial.
Has there been any thought to consolidating some of these bargaining units?
Unfortunately, the patrolmen and the sergeants actually, they broke off. It used to be the patrolman sergeant union, and they separated. So that added another union to bargain with.
So what we're doing this is approving the contracts. Town meeting would approve the contracts that have already been negotiated
Correct.
and have been approved by the selectmen.
So far, the ones that have been approved by by both the membership and the Board of Selectmen are the patrolmen and the dispatchers.
But this isn't approving just the contract, it's also funding.
Correct. This is to approve and to fund.
We are tentatively by approving the funding, approving the contract.
Right. There's sometimes when I've always tried to put enough in the budget usually when we're looking at them, but when you're going in arrears badly, it's a painful process. And that's especially when you're negotiating with the schools on the budget process. How do I say, well, this is what I anticipate I'm going to need, when they say this is what we need? That's why I like having the contracts done and going forward, so.
So we're all done now.
We'll be right back into it pretty soon in another year or so.
Another year, you're right there,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a bit of a Groundhog Day feeling, so.
So approval of this will help us set budgets for next time.
It will have set, but when we first got the bond rating increase, they were very excited to see how close we were with most of our contracts and how many we'd sell, because they consider those outstanding liabilities. And if you have your liabilities so far in arrears, it doesn't show sound financial management.
Entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
And
Opposed? To vote? Unpaid bills.
There are none
should we approve
at this
that?
time.
Should we approve that anyway, just in case something comes up, or,
Yeah, you could have it on there as an approval. I think the last one we had was from Commission on Disabilities about 2 years ago or so. The departments have been really good, and the accounting office has been cracking the whip on that, keeping everybody honest, so.
We can do a motion to approve with a qualifier that there are none at this time, but in case anything comes in. So entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Good.
Opposed? Vote, thank you. Let's see. And that is everything with respect to town meeting.
Yay!
Excuse me, did we vote on, are we doing anything with the solar pilots, number 30? Did I miss the vote?
Nope.
Assessor?
Nope, that we postponed for more information.
Okay, so we're not gonna do that, okay.
No.
Did the TIF come up, or that was?
oh yeah, the TIF went through. That sounds like a good idea.
Yes.
The solar pilot, we'd like some sort of a pro forma that shows that
Which one?
it's good for
Four.
the town as well as the developer.
Is that the one I think is George Powell?
That's the one you just voted for.
I know, maybe I did something wrong.
Okay, everybody, make sure they keep in mind, October 23rd is town meeting.
When is our next meeting, boss? Next Wednesday?
That one.
Yes, because there's some outstanding articles we haven't voted on. And hopefully, if we are able to acquire that information, we should do it. Aside from that, I think Kelly and I and Ellis, we get together and we put most of the report together in preparation for going to the printer. We're using a new printer, Cottage Printing up in Middleborough, which I believe the selectmen use as well as town clerk for their reports. I spoke to them and they have different shelves of different areas they work in. And they had some 30 or 40 town reports that they do. So they're very versatile. The only option, we have to figure out how to make sure everything's in a PDF format. Or they will convert for us and charge us for us. I don't know how much it's gonna cost us. It's gonna be more expensive.
I can convert anything to PDF.
You can.
I'm sure Kelly can too.
Oh, Kelly, perfect.
And
I just
she-
found out today, I think, how we can do it, but I'll check with Ellis.
in Word, there's just, it says convert, and
Right,
Well, you just save it as a PDF. Yeah.
well, you could
No, I
print
know
it as a
that.
PDF, or you could use this convert button in Word.
The only one that won't convert well to PDF is JPEGs. I think you have to do something different for them.
You could just, cut and paste them in. Or you could cut and paste it into Word and go from there. I got it
yeah,
covered.
we'll
You
figure
got it covered.
I know how to use Adobe.
All right.
Ready, may I ask the town administrator a question, please?
No. Of course you can. Just burst right in.
Now, I was a little confused here for a second, I don't remember something. Can you explain why you're for the budget adjustment, Article 4?
Article 4, I'm for and putting it on there, is that if that COA article, the COA director article goes through, that will create an unbalanced budget, because they put raise and appropriate, which is taxation. So that will be in excess, 66,000 in excess of the revenues that we have. So when we voted and had the budget document, we give that to the Department of Revenue. Now we will pull this other article, and when we go through the tax rate setting process, at the end of it, it'll say that, we have essentially an unbalanced budget by 66,000. I asked the Department of Revenue, and this seems like a silly question, but it was an honest one. Could I just not spend the money? Could I say we're going to encumber it, not spend it? They said, no, you really can't do that. You will have an unbalanced budget, and the legislative body has to vote to fix that. And that's what Article 4 would be. Because at that point, we would have to vote to reduce budget lines to bring it within, let's say it was a $60 million budget. That's the number we need to hit.
Okay, so,
So would you be able to do that by yourself?
It would be, I would bring a proposal to town meeting. So that's if,
So we
I'm
have to
going-
have another town meeting anyway.
no, before this happens, I'm probably going to look at different lines in the budget and see where we'd cull it from. And I can't take it from the schools, just in case anybody's going to ask. You can't adjust it at
but they're,
another
not-
town meeting.
but they're pulling that,
I can't take the chance down that it doesn't.
aren't they pulling 34, the fund director?
They may request to have it, but there may be somebody in the audience that wants the COA director, and if it passes, because it doesn't matter, the time they had to pull it, realistically pull it, was before the warrant was finalized. They could have all 10 said, we would like to pull this article. That
So it's
did
gonna
not
be on
happen.
that, no matter what, it's
Right.
gonna be on there.
It's on the warrant.
So
Okay,
we should vote yes or no on that.
yeah, we put no action, that's kinda what threw me off, because I thought it was coming up, because that's why, if it was off, if 34 is not gonna be on there, I was gonna change my vote on 4, because I think the trouble you're gonna have with 4 is, I think people are gonna think it's gonna give you power,
Right.
and I think that's gonna be a big mistake.
So if that article comes up, Article 4,
Yeah.
comes up in the lottery, we will then have to take the other article, the COA director, out of order. So with the moderator, I would request this of the moderator to take it out of order. I
Okay.
bring Article 30,
It's 30,
Four.
34,
34, bring that forward
yep.
and say, okay, now, once they voted on that, if it's yay, all right, then that gets passed. Now we'll go to Article 4. In Article 4 will be the adjustments that I'm requesting. It does not mean that after town meeting, I can just willy-nilly change budgets. I can't legally do that. Only town meeting can do that.
Because it kind of says you can.
Yeah, that's,
I guess that's what's throwing me
Yeah,
and
me
and
too.
Dom too. Is it-
The wording
it's sort of-
implies you have
It's
freedom.
not specific
do
to this
so.
one instance.
Right. Even town meeting actually couldn't overarchingly provide me that authority. Through the state statutes, you can't do that.
So this,
I would
so,
love to. I think it's a heck of a way to do business that you can't
Yeah.
take even within one budget from expense to salary, but.
so
Right.
4 is
Such is
really
life.
only in there to protect us against 34.
Correct.
No other, it can't do anything else.
If 34 fails or is withdrawn or is voted on Article 4, we would just pass over.
That answers my question. All right, I'll leave it alone.
So
Thank
that
you.
would be
That
fine.
really squared it away.
So
But you
just as a,
mentioned, Dominic, you would perhaps, we should make a more direct statement on 34. And to do that, I just entertain a motion to reconsider our vote on Article 34.
I think we should. I'd like to make a motion to
Reconsider.
reconsider our vote on Article 34, please.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The vote. Now I have a motion on, again, another motion on Article 34. Motion to oppose.
That's my opinion. I have a motion to oppose Article 34.
May I have a second?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Can we have a moment of discussion here?
Yes.
Certainly.
So, Derek, help me understand, if it's been pulled,
It has not been pulled.
so
No.
that, so why do I have pulled written on here? I thought.
We've been advised indirectly from Missy that it will be pulled.
Okay, so it wasn't actually
This is a
officially.
petitioner thing, it's not.
So it's still
she
on
can
the
do it
warrant though,
herself.
so it can still be voted on. That's the problem.
Right, so
Because it's
not-
on the warrant.
They've requested to pull it,
the petitioner can advise to pull it, the town meeting can choose not to accept it. Accept their request.
I thought it had actually been pulled, but
No.
it was just happened to still be on this printout.
Oh, no,
Correct,
it's
yeah.
official.
It's still on there, and the motion is going to tell us what's going to happen. And, you know,
So it's 30.
most likely we will help them by having a motion in the PowerPoint to pull it, but,
But they may come up
But
with
that's
something
squared away,
different.
because I really.
There may
thought-
be enough Q-tips in the audience that we will approve it.
I don't understand comments like that.
Because the way Paul was written, I just thought it would be a nightmare. Because it doesn't really say, you know, maybe you would have to explain it that way, but the way you read it, and you read it first, it seems like it gives you carte blanche power, and I just think that would go crazy. Town meeting would go crazy.
Let me just make this statement. It would be a nightmare for me,
Yeah.
because every single person would be coming, trying to take
That's what I
from
mean,
one
yeah,
to another.
yeah, I mean,
Right.
it would be
Yeah.
really wrong.
So-
Okay, all right.
He just steals
I
the
feel
dice
better
out
about
of
everything.
his son's game and
I feel better.
Yeah, as much as it's a tough thing, it's easier to say that's the budget that was voted,
That's right.
so.
Leave it alone. Live with it.
Okay, Article 34, all in favor of the motion to disapprove?
Aye.
By disapproving, I'm sorry, I warned you of this earlier, so by disapproving, we're saying we're not in favor of the $66,000 request?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, just kind of
So we're gonna say yes to say no.
a, right,
Okay.
I just wanna make sure I understood the
Yeah, it's
logic.
unusual. Yeah, this is
So
a
if we
negative
vote
motion.
yes, we're saying
Yes.
no to the, okay.
Article 31, direct approval.
Can we not just make it less
Dominic, will you,
confusing?
I'm not,
I'll ask you to rephrase your motion to make it positive, that is a motion to approve. It's easier to, when I write the votings, that we are 007,
right.
7, then,
So,
Okay, so if you're keeping as favorable action, everybody will understand that it's saying, if it's, 900, that means you're in favor for it, if it's, 0,
7-0.
uh, in the order, which is,
So, what,
so as you, we've reconsidered,
yes,
so make a motion to approve, and we'll defeat it.
okay, so then,
Will the seconder
so
accept that?
motion to approve.
motion to
Article-
approve Article 34.
Second.
Motion made and seconded, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed?
Yay.
Yay.
0 to 7. 007.
No, 070.
070.
I always get confused if the middle number is the abstain
No,
or,
last time was
The last one's 16.
It's like when you put your initials, the last initials in the middle.
okay. We have our secretary present that accounts for it correctly. And I believe we are done, as I said before.
Well, we have minutes to approve, is that correct?
Yes, that's then we're coming to that.
All right.
Is there anything else though before we go on? Any comments, concerns or questions anyone has about town meeting? Okay, next on the issue is approving the minutes of September 20th, which are last.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you, Derek.
Good night.
Move to approve the minutes from September 20th.
Do we have a
Sorry about
motion
your
to approve
assessment.
as written? Any questions? Do you have a second?
Second.
Motion is made and
I'll check
seconded to approve the minutes as printed. Any questions or concerns, corrections? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Opposed?
I'll abstain, I wasn't
Abstain.
here.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I got to.
We have 3 abstentions.
Still in favor of approving.
That's right, we just dropped down below quorum.
Hmm.
We need a half person. Derek, come back. Okay, we just move on to the next one. No quorum.
I mean, can you approve it if you weren't here?
It's fine, we'll do it next time.
It's really inappropriate to do so, but you can, but it's
I mean,
inappropriate.
It helps us, I'll
I'm
do it, I don't
approving it,
care.
even though I wasn't there.
I only abstained because I
I thought
wasn't
they were
here.
well written, I could understand them, I think they should be approved.
I thought they were very well written.
Like to say.
We can compliment our secretary directly.
She always does a good job.
Yes.
I have a motion to approve as written. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Vote.
Abstain.
Doing one.
It's always one.
Next meeting date tentatively is next Wednesday. And we'll make sure we get that information. And I'll attempt to try and make everybody aware of it tomorrow. And we get it, and sometime about Monday, Kelly will have it, and she can electronically send it out to everyone.
Next Wednesday, the 4th.
Yes, yes.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? To vote. Oh, by the way, there's a report from Moody's, if anyone is interested in the
Ah,
latest and
Yes.
greatest.
you have a copy of that?
I'd like to say I will, but I'm not gonna read it. Let me know if there's anything cool in there.
All right.
Oh, if we get another